Hello, thank you for participating in the Fiscal Year 2023 Department of Education's Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad Long-Term Technical Assistance webinar. My name is Cory Neal. I am the GPA Program Manager. Please note that we will be conducting two separate workshops this year for GPA short-term projects and GPA long-term projects. This technical assistance webinar will focus on the long-term projects. Both webinars have been pre-recorded and can be accessed through the Department of Education's GPA website. The agenda for the Technical Assistance Workshop is as follows. We will review the purpose of the GPA long-term program. We will review the competition highlights as referenced in the NIA. We will discuss the eligibility requirements for both applicants and participants. We will review the long-term project design. We will discuss the project phases for the long-term project. We'll go over the allowable cost under the GPA long-term program. We'll review the selection criteria and the process for selecting awardees. And lastly, we will provide some helpful tips for developing a competitive application. The Fulbright-Hays long-term GPA program is designed to contribute to the development and improvement of the study of modern foreign languages and area studies in the United States by providing training opportunities for upperclassmen and/or graduate students in foreign language countries where the U.S. has diplomatic representation. Long-term advanced overseas intensive language training projects are designed to take advantage of the opportunities present in the foreign country that are not present in the United States when providing intensive advanced foreign language training. We define area studies as the study of the aspects of a society or societies, including the study of their geography, history, culture, economy, politics, international relations, or languages. For fiscal year 2023, the estimated range of awards is between $50,000 and $300,000, with the average size of an award being approximately $299,605. We estimate to make approximately 25 awards, 10 of which we estimate to be long-term GPA awards. But please note the department is not bound by any estimate in this webinar. Okay, every year we have the absolute priority, which means that projects must satisfy this priority, and that is specific geographic regions of the world. Projects must focus on one or more of the following geographic regions of the world: Africa, East Asia, Southeast Asia and the Pacific, the Western Hemisphere, Eastern and Central Europe and Eurasia, and the Near East. Please note that GPA long-term projects that focused on Western Europe will not be reviewed. These countries include Andorra, Austria, Belgium, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, San Marino, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. Next, I'll cover applicant and participant eligibility requirements. Eligible applicants for the GPA long-term projects include institutions of higher education, state departments of education, private non-profit educational organizations, and consortia of institutions, departments, and organizations. An individual is eligible to participate in a GPA long-term project if he or she is a citizen, national, or permanent resident of the United States, meaning they have a green card, and they must have successfully completed at least 2 years of academic training in the language to be studied. If a participant is a native speaker of the language your project intends to study, the participant must still have the 2 years of academic training in this language. Native speakers are not excluded from this requirement. Participants should be studying in the fields of humanities, social sciences, foreign languages, and/or area studies, again defined in a previous slide. And generally, the group may include graduate students or juniors or seniors in higher education institutions who are prospective teachers in the areas previously mentioned, and graduate students or juniors or seniors in higher education institutions who plan to apply their language skills and knowledge of countries vital to the United States national security in fields outside of teaching, including government, the professions, or international development. Let's take a look into the features of a GPA long-term project. Your long-term GPA project must study a language indigenous to the country you plan to study in and be designed for maximum use of local institutions and personnel. Language training must be given at the advanced level, that is, equivalent to that provided to students who have successfully completed at least 2 academic years of language training. GPA long-term grantees must have the appropriate language instructor administer pre- and post-test language evaluations to all participants. All right, breaking down the long-term by the numbers. For long-term advanced intensive language projects, the minimum time spent in host country should be 8 weeks. This does not include the pre-departure orientation in the United States, which we will touch on shortly. Your grant performance period is 24 months. The minimum amount of participants is typically 12 participants and 1 project director for a total of 13 individuals. The maximum grant award is $300,000. This information and more can be found on page 19 of the application package. We highly encourage each applicant to check the State Department's website for alerts and warnings, as GPA applicants proposing to travel to a country that is closed to Fulbrighters will be disqualified. The countries on this slide are the current countries that are closed to Fulbright-Hays projects. If you are unsure of a specific country, please feel free to contact me at gpa@ed.gov. As a reminder, we've received several inquiries about Cuba and Egypt as possible destinations for GPA long-term projects. These countries are currently closed to all Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad projects. Grantees will have 24 months to carry out their project activities. For fiscal year 2023, the proposed start and end dates are June 15th, 2023 to June 15th, 2025. Okay, let's discuss the 3 project phases. These include the pre-departure phase, the overseas phase, and the post-overseas or follow-up phase. For the pre-departure phase, grantees should allot at minimum 16 hours towards a pre-departure orientation. Pre-departure preparation should consist of conducting a series of lectures on the country of study. Advanced reading material should be sent to the participants several weeks prior to the pre-departure orientation. And for that orientation, we suggest that the applicant include guidelines on conduct, discussions on daily living and traveling in the host country, team building exercises, team assignments, and individual proposed projects, cross-cultural training, and language assessments. This is a sample of a pre-departure orientation schedule. Please make sure your pre-departure orientation is detailed. You may include a copy of that orientation, as you should include a copy of that orientation, in the appendices of your application package. We'll touch on that a little later. The next phase is your overseas phase. This is where you provide detailed information in your in-country itinerary. These details should include your daily language class itinerary with detailed contact hours, which needs to be at least 120 in-country contact hours per student. Details about academic lectures, field trips, and culture activities can be included here, debriefings and evaluations, and travel arrangements and accommodations. Remember, the more information you provide in your project narrative, the more likely you are to receive a respectable score. We'll touch on that project narrative a little later as well in a little more detail. Applicants should include, as part of the last phase, which is the follow-up phase, an end-of-project evaluation to be completed by each participant to assess the quality of the overseas project. The Department of Education reviews each evaluation submitted by the participants to ascertain the success of the project and to provide suggestions for improvements should the grantee submit a subsequent application for funding. The follow-up phase should also include language proficiency post-test results, as well as all other required reports that we'll touch on a little later. The follow-up phase can include information on staff development, such as workshops and conferences, It can also include information on dissemination and outreach plans, any kind of publicizing and recruiting for future participants for future projects, and any other outreach activities. Okay, up next is the selection criteria. So this, in essence, is the rubric that is used to score an application. And so for a GPA long-term application, there are 8 criteria that are your selection criteria, and you should address all 8 of these in your project narrative. Your project narrative is a maximum of 40 pages, and I do recommend that you use all 40 pages, and it should touch on each of these items in the order that they are presented here. Applicants can receive 100 points for addressing all selection criteria. In addition, you can receive up to 6 additional points by addressing the competitive preference priorities specific to long-term projects. So let's break each of these criteria and the competitive preference priorities down a little further. So the first criteria is the plan of operation. This is worth up to 20 points. Applicants should introduce the reader to their institution or organization by providing statistics and other demographic information relevant to the project. The need for the project, the selection of the country of study, and the objectives of the project should be discussed. The project design should be addressed. This generally includes the 3 project phases we discussed earlier. Applicants should note how each phase of the project is to be carried out and supported under the plan of operation criteria. Continuing on with the same criteria, plan of operation, you should also address how the management plan will link all of the project phases and how it will efficiently operate under all the project parties. Applicants should describe in which ways resources and personnel will be used in achieving the objectives of the project and include details of which key personnel will be responsible for vital project components and activities, and describe the how, why, when, and where project activities will take place. Let's go back here. I have one more item to add to plan of operation that actually is very important, and a lot of applications leave this out. You should also include a clear description of how your project will provide equal access and equipment for participants, regardless of race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. A lot of applicants forget to include this, which does result in a point deduction. So please make sure to include this in your plan of operation. Okay, moving on to your second criteria, the quality of key personnel, and this is worth 10 points. Applicants should address the qualifications of the U.S. project director, which includes their academic training, their field of expertise in the host country, the administrative experience, their language training, and any other related qualifications. It's also important to note the project director's time commitment to the project. Please provide expertise of any other support staff as well as their time commitment to the project. And then you should also provide host country key personnel qualifications. So some maybe administrative staff, language teachers, assessors, and evaluators in the host country. Please make sure to include their titles, their responsibilities, and their time commitments to the project. You should also, as part of the institution's non-discriminatory employment practices, show how employment from underrepresented groups will be without regard to race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. In the appendices section, you can upload abbreviated CVs, which should be no more than 3 pages per key personnel. Okay, the next criteria is budget and cost effectiveness. This is worth up to 10 points. Here you should demonstrate and justify that all allowable expenses presented are adequate and reasonable in today's market and necessary to accomplish the project's goals. Applicants should discuss their project's cost effectiveness and show the relationship between the project's costs and the project's objectives. GPA programs do not require matching funds, but we do highly recommend using matching funds. And that can be cost sharing by the applicant, cost sharing by participants, a combination of the two. In your budget narrative attachment, applicants should upload a detailed itemized line budget and accompanying budget narrative that clearly outlines how the costs have been calculated and are necessary to the project's objectives. I highly recommend including both the line item budget and the budget narrative. It really helps the readers to see clearly exactly how the funds are planned to be used. Okay. So remember again too that long-term projects have a 24-month project period, so your budget should reflect those 24 months. So let's talk about what you can use that money for. When developing that budget, keep in mind that funding can be used for the following items: lodging and meals, round-trip international travel, and as a reminder, all flights to and from the U.S. must be Fly America Act compliant, travel within the host country, educational materials purchased in the host country, meeting space within the host country, local administrative fees and services, and host country evaluators. It is important to note that the grant does not provide funds for project-related expenses within the United States. This includes U.S.-based salaries, the pre-departure orientation, and any follow-up activities done in the United States. These items must be included as part of the applicant matching contribution. I would also like to note that the GPA grant may pay for costs associated with pre and post foreign language assessments, which again are required for a long-term project, if and only if those assessments are conducted in the host country. If they are conducted in the United States, they cannot be covered by GPA funds. Okay. So here's an example of that line item budget I mentioned before, and I always like to use this budget because it clearly shows kind of this 3-column design that makes it very easy for our peer reviewers to see exactly what funds will be coming from the GPA program, what funds are covered by the institution, and what funds are coming from the participant. And it kind of clearly displays exactly that. There's no searching, no guesswork. So I always like to show this budget as an example. And again, I highly recommend doing something very similar to this. And again, including the line item budget, like you see here, as well as the budget narrative. Moving on with your selection criteria, the next criteria is the evaluation plan. This is worth up to 20 points. So a well-designed evaluation plan includes clearly articulated goals, measurable objectives, both quantitative and qualitative, ways to collect data to show progress, formal evaluations at each phase of the project, and informal evaluations, which can take the form of debriefings or daily journals. To add credibility to your evaluation plan, we highly encourage using an external evaluator that is independent of the project, meaning someone who is outside of your academic department or even external to your institution. Evaluation instruments that will be used to collect data during all project phases should also be included in your appendices. And lastly, a timetable should be included to highlight when key components of the evaluation plan will occur. As part of your evaluation plan, you need to fill out a performance measure form, or PMF. This is included in the application. You're required to develop the proposed goals and the project's specific performance measures and activities on the performance measure form. So I have an example here for you, and in this example, the project's goal is to increase language proficiency to advanced level for at least 60% of participants by the end of the performance period. You'll notice in the yellow, you have activities, data indicators, frequency, and data source. So these performance measure forms should be linked to the overall performance measure of the program, which include the GEPRA measure 1, which for long-term projects, that is the percentage of GPA participants in the advanced language program who increase their reading, writing, and or listening, speaking foreign language scores by 1 proficiency level. The efficiency of the GPA long-term program is measured by considering the cost per GPA participant who increases his or her foreign language score in reading, writing, and or listening, speaking by 1 proficiency level. Okay, Moving on with our criteria. The adequacy of resources criteria is worth 5 points, up to 5 points. Here, you want to answer what resources will be used to accomplish the project goals that are outlined in the project, both in the United States and abroad. You should also indicate specifics regarding the use of facilities, supplies, and other resources to show that they are adequate to carry out the activities in all phases of the project. And in your appendices section, you should upload letters of support from both the U.S. And your host country institutions and individuals. We'll discuss the appendices further here in just a minute, but let's continue on with potential impact, which is worth up to 15 points. Here you want to answer the question, what is the potential impact of the project on the development and improvement of the study of modern foreign languages and area studies in U.S. education? What are the possible long-term benefits to project participants, their communities, their colleagues, etc., resulting from successful completion of the grant? What specific multiplier effects will this project have? And here you want to indicate the process by which the resulting research or language training will be evaluated for accuracy and effectiveness. Okay, relevance to institutional development. This is worth up to 10 points. Applicants should discuss the missions, goals, and objectives of the applicant institution, as well as what it would mean to have a GPA grant. You want to describe the relationship between the project and the institution's program development in modern foreign languages. And you want to outline what changes will take place due to having a GPA project. And the last criteria is the need for overseas experience. Applicants should discuss how their project will bring about a better understanding of the host country. You should also address the question, why this group of people to this particular place? And lastly, describe the relationship of the project and the institution's program development in modern foreign languages. Okay, so those are the selection criteria that you must address. Here are the competitive preference priorities. I'll also refer to them as CPPs. In essence, these are bonus points for satisfying specific priorities. So for fiscal year 2023, we have 2 CPPs for a possible total of 6 bonus points. Right? In order to receive these points, you must indicate in your application which competitive preference priorities you're applying for. I recommend including this information in both your abstract and your project narrative. So the first one that we have for long-term projects is competitive preference priority 1. We award 2 additional points to applicants from minority serving institutions. The second competitive preference priority is the substantive training and thematic focus on priority languages. This is for 4 additional points. And applications that propose substantive training and thematic focus on any modern, less commonly taught language is eligible for this priority. So any language other than English, French, German, or Spanish. And again, these projects must have 120 contact hours per participant. Okay, I keep referencing these appendices. So in grants.gov, the appendices section provides an other attachments section that can include all sorts of things. So the items that I've outlined here on the slide, I highly recommend you include every single one. Okay, so pre-departure orientation agenda, overseas project itinerary, your follow-up activities, your CVs of key personnel that's from your institution, that's your project director, that's host country, key personnel. Letters of support both from the US and abroad, and then examples of evaluation materials, the project timeline chart, project-specific PMF forms filled out with those proposed measures and activities. Okay, let's talk about some helpful tips and putting together a successful application package. So as you're getting organized, we encourage applicants to review abstracts of funded grantees and past successful programs located on the GPA website. We encourage you to develop internal and external links that will assist you in putting together a solid application. So you may want to meet with relevant staff from the grants and contracts offices, or coordinate with colleagues on campus that have international education and grants experience to develop a robust plan of operation and management plan. In addition, you should secure an external evaluator, as that sends a strong signal to peer reviewers that you are serious about your evaluation. And lastly, reach out to me. I have examples, all sorts of examples, samples of budgets, samples of timelines, samples of itineraries, all sorts of things. So you can contact me again at gpa@ed.gov, and I'd be happy to supply you with some samples to kind of jumpstart and get you moving forward. So in writing your proposal, you want to make sure you address all selection criteria in the order listed in the application packet. Applicants should not make peer reviewers search for the information. You want to generate a table of contents. That's very helpful when developing a highly organized application. Applicants should also provide a detailed plan of operation and evaluation and include sufficient details so that someone unfamiliar with your project could conduct it. You need to write clear, measurable goals, objectives, and outcomes, and provide a specific and detailed budget. And again, make sure you include a line item budget and a budget narrative. Of course, you want to avoid grammatical errors and specific professional jargon and acronyms, and use persuasive descriptions of how your project operates. It's very, very important that you are clear, concise, and detailed. So when you submit your application, I recommend that you register early on grants.gov to avoid any sort of system issues. Of course, you want to save your written proposal to avoid any computer issues. And if your institution is not funded, consult the reviewer comments, and you can always reach out to me as well for any sort of feedback and reapply. And please do not wait to the last minute to submit. The deadline for the fiscal year 2023 application is March 27th, 2023 at 12 o'clock midnight on the dot, Eastern Standard Time. So all applicants will be notified of the results via email no later than September 30th, 2023. It's usually much earlier than that. You will be notified whether your application was successful or not. All scores and comments will be sent to the applicants via email, and for successful grantees, be prepared to hit the ground running. These websites are very helpful. I suggest checking them out as you work on your applications. You can find sample abstracts from past successful projects, sample narratives, submission instructions, and a link to subscribe to our quarterly newsletter, which will inform you of any future applications and competitions. So this is a link to the GPA website as well as my contact information. Again, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And I do want to note that institutions are able to apply for more than one GPA grant. That is, you can submit for multiple long-term projects, multiple short-term projects, or a combination of long-term and short-term. If you choose to submit a short-term application, please be sure to watch the short-term technical assistance webinar, as short-term applications have different requirements than long-term applications. You can find the short-term webinar at the International Foreign Language Education's Office, our YouTube channel. Okay, so thanks for taking the time to listen to the GPA long-term technical assistance webinar. I hope it will help you in putting together a competitive application. I wish you the best of luck, and I look forward to your application. Thank you.